numbers popping up. I think we're live. Raising the volume just a bit. So, yeah, that should be it. So today is a Thursday, but what is new? It's October. So what we're gonna do today is Hacktoberfest. And for all the people that don't know, I'm just gonna visit the homepage of Oktoberfest because they can say it better than I can. I assume they thought about it. Where's the short story of this? Scrolling a bit. Yeah, Hacktoberfest is open to everyone in our global community. Whether you are a developer, student learning to code, event host, or company of any size, you can help growth of open source and make positive contributions to an ever-growing community. All backgrounds and skill levels are encouraged to complete the challenge. Hacktoberfest is a celebration open to everyone in our global community. Pull requests can be made in any GitHub hosted repositories and projects. You can sign up anytime between October 1st and October 31st. So what is this all about? Let me check if, is the chat active? The chat is active. Yeah, there we have it. Okay, so Oktoberfest, the idea is that you can make 4 pull requests in October to open source software on GitHub, which should be very stimulating for people to contribute. And if you do this, you win the challenge. And what can you win? This time, I think it's not just a t-shirt, as is always. I think you can also let them plant a tree or donate to a good, let's see, resources, events, frequently asked questions. Oh, it's even on the front page. Going back again. Support open source and pick a limited edition t-shirt or plant a tree. So you either get a t-shirt or they plant a tree for you. And what is fun for this, if you're doing anything with open source, is that there are many open source repositories. So people have their code on GitHub and they have issues, things that you can improve, and they have the label Hacktoberfest. And these are often relatively easy to fix. So there are things that you can fix in a short period of time. You don't need much knowledge for it. And there are many of these on GitHub. And my idea was today, as it's the first day of October, to create some of these issues. Why am I qualified to do this? That's a good question. I always try to answer. My name is Eric. I am a front-end developer, but mostly a accessibility specialist at ING, which is a large Dutch bank. And I am responsible for the accessibility of our web components, the reusable components that are used throughout the company. So I know a little bit about accessibility there. Besides that, I also do audits. So I don't just look at the simple components, but look at entire pages as well, even though issues often arise in the components. And from that background, I'm now going to look at Hacktoberfest just to see what we can add to this. So we've got Electron. So what is Electron? I've got the GitHub repository here. So Electron is an open source project with a global contributor community. That's the code of conduct, but that doesn't say what Electron is. Do they have a short text or something? No, we're just going to cheat and see it here. Build cross-platform desktop apps with JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. So, in my opinion, easy description. Electron allows you to make something as if it were made for the web, but you can enjoy it on a desktop. Famous examples are the Slack application. Slack is an Electron app, as they call it, so it's built like a website, but you can use it as an app. And Electron is the platform that turns it into this app. And what does Electron have? Oh, I'm going to trip over my tongue so many times today. Electron has a website where you can get started. And we're going to do a quick inspection. See if we can find some issues. And I think I've got some things already that stand out. And we're going to make some issues on their repository on GitHub. And then people can improve it and pick it up if they like. So we're gonna start with the easiest of easiest things. I'm gonna open my developer tools for the Electron website. I'm even gonna zoom in a bit so it's a bit bigger, and I'm going to a browser extension called Axe, and I'm gonna say analyze. So this is an automated testing tool. Oh, let's move this aside. It's an automated testing tool. It cannot find everything, but it finds a lot of things already. So on this simple page, this is the front page, electronjs.org. It says there are 7 issues, 5 issues with color contrast, 1 issue with a non-unique ID, and a link with non-discernible text. So let's see what we can find. The non-discernible text is the site header logo, it says. So I'm gonna guess that's this one at the top. Yeah, it's an SVG and it's ARIA hidden. So there is an SVG here, but if you use a screen reader or any other sort of assistive technology, you're not gonna find this logo because it's hidden. The result of that is that there is no content within this link. Hey, Marijn, thanks for joining us. Yeah, I already saw some contrast issues as well. I'm really curious to measure some, but gonna start from the top. So we have this link, which is, can I move this to this? I can enlarge it a little bit, right? So they have this anchor element. And the only thing inside the anchor element is an SVG, but the SVG is hidden. This means that there's no text inside the anchor element. There's no image with an alternative text. If somebody uses a screen reader, for example, and they browse this image, they go here, they see a link. They're gonna hear that there's a link, but it doesn't have a name. So, no name. I think that's enough for an issue already. I'm just gonna go to another page, see if the logo is returning. Yeah. I'm gonna inspect it again, see if the issue is still there. Yeah, so again, it goes to the same place. So we have our first issue. That's really quick. So there's a logo on top. It doesn't have an alt text or anything, but it is hidden. So how are we going to create that as an issue? I did a little bit of preparation. So I'm going to add a little bit of text already. It says, this finding of this issue has been recorded. It is part of my weekly accessibility stream on Twitch. A recording should also be up on up soon at YouTube. So I share 2 URLs so people can find the context. I think that's really useful. So there's this link. The first thing we have to do is, where is it located? What are we talking about? So there. I'm gonna write it first, and the short version will come later. There is a logo in the header that links to the home page. The logo is hidden. Does it have any other content? Yeah, it doesn't matter really. Hidden for assistive technology like screen readers. Which is fine by itself. There is no textual content inside the link. People who use assistive technology will not be able to understand where the link leads. Yeah. And to my understanding, this is also not good for SEO. And that's something that people care about. So this empty link, let's put it like that. A possible solution is a visually hidden text inside the link that describes the link purpose. And that's a WCAG reference, so that's easy to get. So I'm gonna start loading this page. Oh, let me spam some URLs anyway. So I'm gonna share in the chat. This is the URL we're checking on GitHub. This is the URL on the website, Electron.js. And I'm grabbing, as very often, I'm grabbing the quick reference of the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. And there is a purpose, link purpose. This is the one. So there's a WCAG criterion that even aligns with this. The purpose of each link can be determined from the link text alone. There is no link text. Or from the link text together with its programmatically determined link context, except where the purpose of the link would be ambiguous to users in general. So I'm just going to link this as well. I'm going back to the tab. So a possible solution is a visually hidden text inside the link that describes the link purpose. Oh, I told you I'm going to trip over my tongue so many times today. It's been a busy day. I'm going to talk about it in a second. The corresponding WCAG criterion can be found here. And I think that's our first issue. I'm just going to call it empty link. I think that should suffice. Good luck. Add your Hacktoberfest label, people of Electron. I don't even know if they do Hacktoberfest, but if you're doing it, feel free to pick it up. So we have our first issue. I'm going to put it in the chat as well. If anybody wants to fix it, you're more than welcome. It's open source. It's good. It's for a good cause, basically. Although there are a lot of companies that use Electron, so you can determine for yourself how interesting you find it to have this cause. So we're going to look at the website some more. Something that was mentioned right away, contrast. And that's something I'm very curious about as well. There are so many texts that might be hard to read, but contrast is sometimes a bit unpredictable. So we're going to get our color contrast picker. So this is the color contrast analyzer by the Pacello group. It's a tool to pick colors. So what are we going to pick first? I think the top menu, because that's very important. So I'm going to pick the background color, which is like a dark gray, maybe slightly blue. Yeah, slightly blue. And then there's this menu text. I'm going to use two hands to pick this color because it's very close. Ooh, this fails, but I saw several colors. So to do it very exact, we're going to pick the element in the source. It's a header item. Oh, it's a different color than I picked. And we're going to put that in. So yeah, now it feels even harder. That's good. Okay, glad I checked. Or did I not? Oh, wait, change the background again. No, now it passes. Ooh. So visually I would say, hey, that's a terrible color to pick. But if you actually pick the color with a tool, you check the values, it appears to be passing in contrast. Well, no cookies for us there. Contrast gets even better when you hover over it. Then we've got this one. Search. Is this a placeholder? Yeah, ooh, stuff happening. I'm gonna inspect this element. So this is a input. The placeholder text is search, as we already saw. The ARIA label says search box. And it has a role text box. I don't know why it has a role text box when it's already a search box or search input. Why is there a role on this? It's just an input with type text. I have no idea. Is it in a form? Oh, it's in the navigation. So they say this is the whole navigation. So no idea why this has role text box. Basically, role text box is ARIA again. If you have an element that has no semantics, like it doesn't communicate anything by itself, like a div or a span, you could add something like this, and then it would tell your assistive technology and your browser, hey, this is meant to be a text box. It is my intention to build a text box out of this. It doesn't look like a text box yet, but because I'm adding this role, I'm basically telling you this should be a text box. But you've got an input, which has semantics by itself. It already tells you it's an input. So why they would add a role there is a bit of a mystery to me. Ooh, I see in the chat that the text color seems to be something else. I'm gonna pick it again. Maybe I missed something. Again, to the side, color picker. Oh, I picked the hover cover. The hover the hover color. That's nice. So maybe it's a different color after all. Is it in here somewhere? I'm going too fast for this. Even simple things like... I'm not seeing it in here. Hover, hover. We're not hovering. So what can we do? We can also look at compute it. And indeed, we see a different color. And when I go there, it shows me. It says color inherit. Yeah, it says active. It says hover. Is this the one? No, this is also not the one. I'm gonna go back to compute it. I still think that's the easiest way to find it. I'm just gonna put in these numbers. I'm just gonna make it easy for myself. So there are these sliders. I'm just gonna put in the numbers. So it has 116 for red, 177 for green, and 190 for blue. Yeah, that's a better color for finding issues. It's a better color, but it still passes. It has a contrast ratio of 5.3 on this dark grayish background, and that's enough. It should be at least 4.5. And I'm gonna check if this one is okay as well. Yeah, that's 6.4 because this background is even darker. So even though it looks really dark and hard to read, it's enough. So I'm just gonna go back to the placeholder for a second. Thank you for watching with me. And maybe I can tell you now, it's been a really strange day because I met with a contractor, basically, an architect, and we're gonna have a house built, which is pretty big. So I've been sketching all kinds of houses for many, many weeks. And today was the first time that somebody else showed me what they thought about it. And the reality of it all is that probably within a year, this house is gonna be built somewhere, and it's my idea, which is really surprising by itself. But it's also extra surprising to me because I started this year with a diagnosis of, well, yeah, let's just say it. I started with a diagnosis of having a brain tumor. So starting this year in February, I had a brain tumor removed. It was very doubtful if we would be able to move houses at all, because who would want to insure somebody that just had a brain tumor? Well, not many people, I can tell you that. But it seems to be all happening, and that means today we talked to an architect, and it's a really big step, and I'm still full of impressions. But we have to focus our energy on what we're seeing right here. So there's some stuff happening within the placeholder. There's also really dark text, but it's really hard to pick colors within placeholder, so I think I'm gonna skip that for now. And another side problem is it's this varying state, like the colors change, and it also has an area label, so it's a bit of a complicated case, and I'm gonna skip that for now. But we do have this other span. Oh, and that's interesting. So there's this link. It links to GitHub. It's also the GitHub logo. It looks a lot like the logo we saw before because it's an anchor tag, an anchor element, whatever you want to call it. And there's an image inside. So you would expect to find the same issue. Yeah, it's pretty much the same case. Somebody in chat is saying, yeah, this is good news. I'd have issues getting life insurance up until recently because I had cancer as a child. Now that shouldn't play a role anymore. Yeah, I think a lot has changed in the Netherlands in the last few years. So it used to be an issue pretty much always. If you once had any tumor, cancer, whatever, you'd have issues getting insurance. There has been some change of rules. So now when you have it, you've been cancer-free for 5 years or so, it's less of a problem. But being operated on in the same year and then getting insurance is Somehow still risky. Surprise. So we had to follow this special track specifically for people who've had cancer. And I think they asked like 10 different companies, like, would you insure this person? And only one replied. And it's probably for a shamefully big amount of money, but I'm just happy that I can be insured at all. That's the important part. So yeah, lots of change. So going back to the link, so there's an image inside, and I'm gonna go back to the CSS again, and there's a span inside, and then there's a CSS styling on it, and then I think the CSS styling adds the image. So the actual image is actually in the CSS, which is very creative because then it's decorative by default. It's really hard to add accessible text to to an image that's not actually present in the code. What they did do, however, is they added a title attribute. They added a title attribute to the link, and people are not a big fan of the title attribute. I mean, the good news is it adds a accessible name to this. So they say GitHub organization, which is a strange link to GitHub, but sure. And when you hover it long enough, it will show this like tooltip. People say that's the value of the title attribute. You're going to see a tooltip. But I'm on desktop now. If I were on a mobile or a tablet, there's not much use in a tooltip. It's also, you have to know it's there, because when I hover this, there's no tooltip. When I hover the menu, also no tooltip. The image that we saw earlier, no tooltip. This button English, also no tooltip. So the value of the title attribute is very, very small. I'm also not sure how translation tools work with the title attribute right now. It used to be an issue. I'm gonna see what this is. There's this, I would say a button, but apparently it's a link that says English. That's the one afterwards. I'm gonna click it. Ooh, then I can pick a different language. This is really strange because something opens up, which I would describe as an action, but somehow they're using a button. So I'm just gonna set it to Dutch for a second, just to see what happens. So the good news is the language attribute on the HTML changes. It was set to English and US. Now it changes to Dutch. I'm gonna inspect this. I'm gonna say it probably changed as well. No, it says GitHub organization still. So this doesn't translate. That's interesting. So I'm gonna pick a completely different language now. I'm gonna pick French, because I can sort of handle myself with French. Enough to have lived in Switzerland for half a year. Feels like magic, but I did it. It still says GitHub organization. So there are two things happening here. That's going to be an issue. First of all, most of the site remained English on the Dutch version. Oh yeah, I didn't even check the rest yet. I'm so focused. Yay. Oh yeah, it still says Black Lives Matters. It still says build cross-platform. Yeah. Okay, pretty much everything stayed English except the top of it. Oh, and then it's easier than you think, but in Dutch. Yeah, then there's a lot of Dutch stuff, and then it's English again. Okay, so I think there's still two issues. One is, of course, the page doesn't translate. I'm pretty sure they're aware of that. It's so big, it's not really an accessibility issue either. So I'm gonna say, hey, somebody else probably picked that up. But then there's the other issue, and I'm gonna go back to WCAG again, switching screens. Can I just find it like this? Language of parts and language of page. So WCAG has two criteria that are focused on language. They are part of readable, that you should make text content readable and understandable, and they are part of understandable. Information and the operation of the user must be understandable. Because everything is nested in WCAG. There's this hierarchy. So the first one there is 3.1.1, language of page. The default human language of each web page can be programmatically determined. That's what I checked first. That's when you go to the HTML attribute or HTML element. There's a language tag, or I'm confusing. It's the HTML tag or element, and it has a language attribute, and it's set to NL, which means it's Dutch right now. So you can determine that this page is supposed to be in Dutch, but it's not. It's only partially in Dutch, as we've seen. Big parts of it are in English. So it says documentation nicely in Dutch, but then it says releases in English. So yeah, maybe the main page is Dutch and it's set to Dutch, but that doesn't mean everything is Dutch. So we go to the second criterion. It says language of parts. And that basically says that if you have some text on the website that is in a different language, it has a separate attribute to indicate this. So I'm just gonna open this again, grab the link. Oh, there's much better. I'm gonna copy my previous issue so I can make a new issue. I'm gonna paste it in here, and I'm gonna replace the link with the one we just found. So there's a WCAG criterion, which makes it really easy for me because I don't have to argue that it's a best practice or anything. They just can see what they have to do. Language. Hello, caps lock. Language of parts not indicated. When another language is picked for the website, parts are translated. The entire page is indicated as having switched to the new language. And then I'm gonna add as a note, there is a lang attribute on the HTML element. However, as not everything is in the selected language, some parts should be marked as being a different language. That pretty much covers it. Some parts should be marked as a different language. I think that covers it. If there are any questions, I hope they can find me. They can see the recording and say, hey, that's the one that's bothering us, that's been making all the issues. Well, I'm going to submit this one. So they have some issues with translations and indicating the language. This might be a bit harder to pick up than the last one, but we'll find out. I'm going to copy this text again so we can use it for the next one. And I'm going to say issues. The last one. I cannot access the labels. I cannot add labels. They have to do it themselves. I was thinking maybe I can label it as being a Hacktoberfest issue, but they have to do that themselves. So okay, we're gonna go back to the English version. What's also weird is that it indicates the current language. It doesn't indicate that you can switch language. It just indicates what the current language is. So it doesn't say language toggler, or how they call it, lang select button. Yeah, they even call it a button even though it's a link. Funny people. I'm also going to check. The link actually goes to /languages. What are we going to do? Oh, the language is not supported. Interesting. So I'm just going to complain about this button. So, new issue. I don't think we're going to have a solid criterion here. So, I'm going to pick their name. They have a name for it. I'm just going to reuse it. The lang select button. Is actually not a button, but a link. Yeah, Eric 2020 just gonna complain about this, but I'm just gonna drop a link in there, and I'm not even gonna complain that much. I'm gonna go easy on this. Let's see, do they hover? Yeah, can I open link in a new tab? Oh, in a new tab it does do something. Wait, did I type it wrong earlier? Languages. What did I type earlier then? Slash. And then with a slash it's, ooh, now that's nice. Okay. These patterns always confuse me. Why make a link that opens something and right. So I'm not going to inspect that page. I already saw some issues there. I'm just going to mention them. As we just discussed language of parts, if you see here français, this is a bit of French text. If we follow the issue that we just made, this is a different language. It should be marked up as French. And you see here, it has the ID. And it has a link to a page. But also here, it should have a language attribute. They even have the codes in there. So the code is already known in the programming code, the code behind it. They already know what the language should be. But they're not reusing it for accessibility of this one. Interesting. But we're going to go back. Yeah. It is an anchor element with an href, but it does not open a new page when clicking it. Can I also tab to it? Yeah, and it activates only on space, only on enter or return. That's normal with a link. So I can open and close it with this. Wow, so much to say about this. Let's see what we're gonna put in here. There's like multiple lessons in this, I guess. But it does not open a new link. When clicking it, it opens a part of the page, like an expandable, collapsible details / summary or something like. This is not navigation, but an action. I would advise using a button to perform actions so users know what to expect. So I'm gonna find a big page. Yeah, Marcy Sutton, she has a really big page on links versus buttons. It's already 4 years old, but it's just a great resource, so why would anybody rewrite it? So I'm just going to put it in there. More information on the usage of links versus buttons can be found here. Thanks, Marcy, also for joining us last week. It was really good having you. Then something else. What should we say? To follow the WCAG standard, the button should / link, I guess, also indicate that it opens something. Typing is hard. Ever since I bought a mechanical keyboard, I'm feeling so lost. Inspect elements. Yeah, so the thing is, there's a WCAG criterion. It's called name, role, and value. It means that every interactive element needs to have a name, a role, and a value. Well, the name we've discussed kind of with the image. It's a rather lengthy and complicated subject. But basically, it's what you recognize it by. So in this link, it's the content of the link. It says English, and that's also the name that you will hear if you navigate to it with a screen reader. It will say probably English link. And then link is the role, as we said. You could also add it with aria, the thing that we mentioned before. But in this case, it's an anchor element, which has the native semantics of being a link. So this is going to be pronounced as English, the name of the thing. Link, the role of the thing. But what it's missing is a state. Right now, there is something opened by this link. And this is not communicated in the code. So what they could add, and I'm just going to add it right here. Can I add it as HTML? So what they could add is another attribute. They say aria-expanded is true. If they would set this, it would indicate in the code, hey, this thing does something, it opens something, and the thing that should be opened is open right now. I can also set it to false when it's closed, but right now it's open, and it should communicate this in the code as well, and it's not. So that's part of the issue as well. I'm gonna make one big issue for multiple things. I hope they don't mind. To follow the wcag standard, the button /link should indicate that it opens something. This can be done with aria expanded. Let's make this nice code look. When the section is closed, the link should be set to aria expanded is false, and when it's open, it should be set to, and then I'm just going to copy paste because that's how we do things, and then it should be set to true. This way, the state of the section is communicated in the code. And then one thing I can do is just link to the aria attribute. This is just a bookmark that I use too many times. And I'm just going to search expand without typing errors, expanded. Typing is so hard. Here, aria expanded state. Okay, so this is URL. I'm just going to share it here as well, so you can read with me for all the mistakes that I can make. And the funny thing is, it can be used within a link. It's used in the roles button, combo box, document, link, section, section head, and window. So it can be used with a link theoretically, but it's not really nice. More information on implementation can be found here. What is also confusing is that you have a language picker that is named after the language. It does not indicate that it is indeed a language picker. So renaming it might clarify usage. And then again with no typos. I'm just gonna I'm like this UX reviewer sometimes. There are so many things that I find, and I can't help but shut my mouth, so I'm just gonna share them all. Ooh, what happened there? Was I already on the... I used the link somehow. I went to the language page. What did I do? I think the focus was on the developer tools. I switched back. I clicked this. Nope. I somehow... Oh, that's interesting. That's for up for them. So what more can I say? Yeah, I can say something about the link being able to be opened in another tab, which is really weird because it's not like you're opening this section. It's actually this link. Did I? This is the link, right? Yeah. And then you're no longer picking a language. So I think I'm just gonna stick to these 3 points now for the language picker. Just call it language picker improvements, because it's like this group of issues, and see what they do with it. Now I'm gonna submit it. So that's basically issue number 2. 3? We're up to 3 already. Yeah. And the first one already has a label edit. So who edited? Eric, of course. There's an Eric. Thank you, Eric, for adding a label already. So he added a label I18N, which is just as easy as accessibility. It basically means internationalization. So I'm gonna head back to the main page, and I'm just gonna see whatever I'm gonna find. So there's this announcement, the Equal Justice Initiative. Oh, this is a link. Oh, this is a link. I can only see from the code now that this is a link. I did see it was a different color, but I thought that was just something, I don't know, to make other pieces stand out or something. But this is actually a link. Okay. The Equal Justice Initiative, and read our statement here, which is really old school link text. This is like, click here, use this. I would have made the link text just statement, just to keep it clear. What are you linking to? The statement, not read our statement here. If you have another link to this same statement on the same page, it's a good practice to use the same name, because you're linking to the same resource, and you're not going to reuse read our statement here. It's much easier to reuse statement, because that's what it is. Maybe our statement, I don't know. If they only have one statement and that's theirs, then maybe. Okay, so nothing explicitly wrong there. I'm just being critical as usual. So then there's this SVG. Is it meant to be decorative? It's kind of weird. So there's this SVG. This is an image. And when you have a screen reader, you can find this image. But the image does not have a name. So this is like an image element without an alt tag. I think that's an issue. Let's just test it with NVDA. So I'm gonna
Electron build cross-platform desktop apps with JavaScript.
What you're now hearing is
keep.google.
Yeah, silence.
Show speech.
Silence. What you're hearing right now is NVDA.
Edit read only multi-line.
What you're seeing now is scary stuff.
LinkedIn.
I clicked something that I shouldn't have.
Search box edit. Show speech.
Ha.
$N running NV jump.
I hope this is NVDA.
Magnifier 1 running window.
Oh, it's
magnify running magnifier 1 running window. Magnifier.
Can I close it like this?
Bar.
Yeah, okay. So, I'm sorry to scare you there, but I accidentally opened the magnifier. So the entire everything I saw just magnified, and I didn't see anything. Everything was at 500%. Silence, NVDA. Everything was on 500%. And I didn't know the shortcut, because I never used this computer for much else but streaming, which is great. So we get back to the issue. I started NVDA. I'm gonna start here.
Electron build cross-platform desktop apps with JavaScript, HTML, and CSS.
Yeah, we're on the page.
Document. Banner landmark.
There's a banner
Navigation landmark.
Navigation landmark.
Search box edit.
Search box,
search.
yeah.
Blank.
Search. Yeah, it's called search and it's empty. Okay.
Blank. Blank.
Then I have to
blank.
Remind myself.
Visited link Github organization. English visited link.
Yeah.
English visited link. Japanese link. Espanol, Spanish.
Oh, interesting.
Link. Wikang Tagalog.
So what you're hearing now is I'm just gonna do it again.
Bannerland.
So we are now on the search box. Our keyboard focus is on the search box. And when I press tab, you would expect a logical order. So the next thing would be this GitHub link.
HTTPS.
Yeah, so I tab once.
Visited link Github organization.
Yeah, sounds good, right? That's what we expect. So if I tab again, you would expect to hear English. We would be on the language picker that we saw before. And I'm going to press tab again.
English visited link.
English visited link. So that's the entire story. And when we inspected the code earlier, the next visual thing would be the Equal Justice Initiative link. That would be logical. But I press tab.
English visited link.
English visited link. I thought I just came from there. But visually, I also see that it's the link that we saw that was English is no longer focused. The
banner landmark navigation.
There's this tiny dotted line on it that indicates that it's focused. It's not very clear. It's what the browser does by default, which is a terrible default, but that's a different matter altogether. But when we press tab, we no longer see this, but we hear something else. And when I press tab again,
Japanese link.
Japanese link.
Espanol, Spanish link.
Espanol, Spanish link. So what's actually happening?
Wikang Tagalog.
Our focus
banner landmark
is here.
English visited link. Japanese link. Espanol, Spanish link. Wikang Tagalog, Tagalog link.
So you would expect the tab to focus on the next visual thing, but it's actually going to something that's invisible. So that's an issue for me. I'm going to close it again.
Read our statement here.
I'm going to close NVDA for a second.
Jump.
And now there's a pop-up somewhere. Where did you go?
NV close with show speech viewer on startup check. Untitled bullet NVDA speech line.
Okay, I'm gonna
NV
shut you down here.
NV
yeah.
Okay.
So that's it for the noise. Yeah. I do not envy blind people because screen readers must be terrible to use, if only for all the noise that they produce, and they feel so uncontrollable. But it's better than nothing. So we're going back to this. We found a issue. An issue. Yeah, I think an issue is even better. There's no straight up criterion for this one, but I think it's not how it's meant to be. Keyboard navigation goes into language picker when closed. When navigating the page using a keyboard, pressing the tab key, the keyboard focus moves from interactive element to interactive element. When the language picker is closed, I would expect focus to go from the language picker button, and I'm just gonna put that in quotations because it's not actually a button, to the Equal Justice Initiative. I'm just gonna copy this text so I would expect focus to go from the language picker button to the Equal Justice Initiative link. So I'm gonna put the entire text in quotes so they know which link I mean. So I would expect it from this sort of button to go to the link. Basically what I just said. Instead, the focus goes inside the language picker and passes all available languages. I'm gonna assume it passes all of them. I'm not gonna test right now if it passes all of them, but it goes through the list. The picker is visually hidden, but not for keyboard users. This can be a very confusing experience. That's basically the story here, because it's very confusing. You expect one thing and another thing happens, and basically you're lost. I'm pretty technical, I hope, so I can kind of estimate and guess where the focus went. But if you don't know, you have no idea. It's just gone. So that's another issue. So yeah, now we have 4. Oh, and somebody is adding even more accessibility. Yeah, more Eric. Good luck, Eric. I'm sorry for making all these issues, but I can help what I find. Then we go to the image, because we already mentioned the image. Does the image have a name? So it doesn't have a real name. No class or anything to point to. Hey, so I've got a hi in the chat now. Thanks for filing all the issues. Yeah, well, it's what I do, so my pleasure. I hope to contribute to the project in this way. The next thing we see is this big image. The div above it says hero, so I'm just gonna call it hero image because it's often used name. Let me copy the text of the last one first to make it easy for myself, and I say new issue. Hero image has no alt text. That's the short version. There is a large SVG at the top of the page in a div named hero. I hope that describes the image. It does not have an accessible name, but is also not marked up as decorative. From the context, I would assume it is decorative. This can be fixed by adding area hidden to hide it from assistive technology. So here I can link to the issue, which just says, hey, you have an issue. Well, I mean the WCAG criterion, I can link to the WCAG criterion that says you need to have an alternative text. But I'd rather link to a solution here. So they already know the attribute because we've seen it before. Here it is, area hidden state. I'm just gonna fix the link. Yeah, so I'm gonna link to the attribute. So there's another issue. There we have another one. And we continue. Okay, so the next thing is releases, which is a link apparently, but it's also a heading. So the funny thing is, we're on the home page, but we have an H1 here. So usually there's a sort of hierarchy in these heading levels, and H1 is like the most important heading on the entire page. So you would expect if the title of the page is something like home, actually the title of the page is Electron, build cross-platform desktop apps with JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. Okay, that's the same as we saw here. For a home page, that's not really strange. But the strange thing is the most important piece of text on this page says releases. I think it would be even more logical to put the text above, like this big lead with Electron, build cross-platform desktop, blah blah. To put that in H1, because releases is not the most important text. Even worse, there's a page that is called releases, or actually stable releases in the title and releases in the menu, and it then says again stable releases in what I expect to be an H1. I don't want the accessibility properties, I want to inspect the element. Yeah, so here this is stable releases, that's the H1. So it says this page is about stable releases because it's the biggest, most important heading on the page. And it aligns with the title attribute, which is really good. But it would be more logical if it's then also called releases, or if it's also stable releases in the menu, or either releases everywhere, which would make it really easy. But yeah, you have these beta and nightly releases as well. But it only shows... What if I do beta? I'm still on the releases. But now the title changes to beta. Okay. And what if I remove stable from the URL? Then it redirects to stable. So there's some URL trickery and some stuff with these sort of filters going on. I'm not going to dive too deep in that right now. I'm just going to go back to the front page. So there's a typical situation. If anybody from Electron is watching this, that's pretty typical. Then we have these ways to install. I could comment on the way that's documented, but let's not focus on that. It's readable. I think it's the same colors that we saw before with the same background. So it should be readable, and people who understand it will understand it. You can mouse over it to make it wider and gray out the other ones, so it's sort of a focus. That's fine. I don't see any issues with that. It's marked up as a figure. Then there's pre and code. I have no idea why this is marked up as a figure. Because it's not an image. I think I'm going to make an issue out of this one as well. We keep making issues, but hey, that's what we're here for, so that's the good part. Are they all marked up as figures? Yeah. These are not images. You could mark something up like if it's like text art. You know, there used to be a lot of websites that had this like the Matrix kind of effect with floating text. Or the old IRC and chat clients, you had this art made of text. You could make that up as a figure. I mean, if you pass that by with a screen reader and it would just read out everything that's in there, it would be completely unusable. But this is not decorative. It's an instruction. For some people, this is the most important instruction on the page, maybe even. So not being able to read it would be pretty bad. Yeah. So I'm just going to make another issue. Eric, next one is coming up. Installation instructions on the front page are marked up as a figure. Okay, I'm going to make it a bit shorter because it's pretty long for an issue. Installation instructions are marked up as a figure. And maybe add the just gonna repeat myself. The installation instructions on the front page are marked up with a figure element. They are not images, but maybe even the most important text on the page for many. This can be improved. Yeah, would any semantics here really... I don't think there are better semantics for this. I mean, there's a pre and a code inside, so that's good. So I don't think there's any semantics coming up right now that would be better. So we'll just keep it clean of semantics. This can be improved by putting this content inside an element with semantics or no semantics. No, that's not what I want to say. This can be improved by putting this content inside an element with different semantics or no semantics that don't confuse a user of assistive technology. I think that's pretty clear. because no semantics would be fine as well probably here. So if you want a diff or a span, you need it for markup somehow. It's interactive, so I can imagine that it's useful. So I've already been talking for an hour, and it feels like we're just heading into the page. So there's another H1. So this is interesting. As I said before, the H1 basically indicates what's most important on the page. Indicating it twice can be confusing. There's quite some discussion about it as well, so I'm not going to dive in too deep. But in general, at least it's a good practice also to practice some hierarchy. So if the H1 would have been Electron, then you would have had the releases of Electron, and this would be examples of Electron, which in a hierarchy would be logical below the previous one as well. So then there are these links. So there's an image here inside the link. It's also a picture element again. I'm not sure if that's necessary, but maybe for different qualities. Yeah, they have different ways of encrypting the image. Funny. So the typical thing here is that there is actually an image in there with an alt text, but in this case I would not use. It works for SEO, single H1. I'm not even sure. I don't dive into SEO too much because it's not part of my work. I focus on the accessibility part mostly, but I happen to pick something up every now and then. But I would believe you, single H1 does clarify things. So here there's an image with an alt text. It says Visual Studio Screenshot. I think that's fine because you don't have to be able to read what's on the screenshot. You know, hey, this is Visual Studio Code. You're able to recognize it. But then there's also Visual Studio Code icon. And then there's the text Visual Studio Code. I think all items on this card are meant to indicate, hey, this is about Visual Studio Code. I bet if I use my screen reader, it's gonna read them all. Oh, that's gonna be good. My prediction is that when we go to this link, it will say Visual Studio Code screenshot, Visual Studio Code icon, Visual Studio Code link. So it's really, really verbose. Let's try that out. NVDA. Here comes the noise. Somebody mentioned it. They don't give too much importance to the H1. Yeah. But they use it to understand the page better, if I recall. I can imagine. It sounds really logical.
Visual apps you
Okay, so I'm focused on this now, which is very clear by the selection text. I'm going to tab. I'm going to expect that it goes to Visual Studio Code.
Banner landmark navigation
No,
landmark docs link.
I'm just going to skip to it then. Is there something else
Releases.
interactive?
Main landmark Visual Studio Code.
I usually cheat this way on my Mac by selecting something and then browsing to it very fast. But it doesn't work. So, sorry, I'm going to have a little bit of noise here.
Face Electron fiddle icon.
Oh, now it's... Ooh.
Down debugging Envision screenshot graphic.
Ah, there we have it. So, I'm now coming from the other end.
Automatic Envision screenshot graphic, Envision icon graphic, Envision link.
Envision screenshot graphic, Envision icon graphic, Envision link. So for one simple link that visually just says
build a website,
Envision,
it
says three things. It says three things to indicate that this is Envision. I'm going to move the speech viewer.
NVDA speech view. Access Microsoft Teams screenshot graphic, Microsoft Teams icon graphic, Microsoft Teams link.
So it says Microsoft Teams screenshot graphic, Microsoft Teams icon graphic, Microsoft Teams link. Again, three things. This is really verbose. 2 out of 3 are decorative in my opinion. So I'm going to go back again.
Twitch screenshot graphic, Twitch icon graphic, Twitch link.
Yeah, that's too much. I'm going to shut down NVDA again. The best part of using a screen reader is when you shut it down.
Exit NVDA.
And I think I'm going to make this the last issue. We've created pretty much a lot of them. I think some of them are really easy to be fixed as well. And how are we going to call this? Featured apps. So we're going to make a new issue. featured apps have there's this English word that's really hard to spell. That's necessary. I could say here unnecessary, but I've picked an easier route for myself. These days I say superfluous, which I really like. It's a really nice word and it's easier to spell. And probably I'm gonna spell it wrong now. So featured apps have superfluous alt text on images. So I don't have to think about how to spell unnecessary. Every featured app has 2 images, a screenshot and an icon, and a heading text, I think. It was a heading, right? Yeah, it's an H4. Talking about hierarchy, this is an H4 below an H1. So you're basically skipping 3 levels. That's not how hierarchy works. I would have made this one an H2 and this one an H3, and then we're all back up again. So every featured app has 2 images and a heading text. Both images have alt text. Yeah, sometimes the alternative is a fancier word. I think superfluous is a great word. I don't even need to sound smart because I complain about everything already, so they already think I know something. Both images have alt text that basically indicate what the featured app is. The heading indicates this as well. The images can be marked up with an empty alt attribute. So that's alt equal sign and then quotation marks. This indicates that the images are decorative. And then bracketed again because their functionality is already covered by the heading. So yeah, every featured app has 2 images, a screenshot and an icon, and a heading text. Both images have alt text that basically indicate what the featured app is. The heading indicates this as well. The image can be marked up with an empty alt. This indicates that the images are decorative because their functionality is already covered by the heading. Right now, the accessible name, how the link is pronounced, is very verbose by mentioning the app name thrice. We can use the word thrice. How good is that? Okay, so I think that's the last issue for now. So I'm just gonna check. Yep, we've made 7 issues. Some easier to fix than others. I don't know the exact code behind it, so that's a challenge for different people. I don't know if they're all as easy for everybody to pick up for Hacktoberfest, but I hope some of them are. I've already done some work for Hacktoberfest as well. In 2 weeks, I will be an official Hacktoberfest event. I don't think it's on the website yet, but it means that for an hour you can ask me anything about accessibility and relations in relationship to Hacktoberfest. So if you are fixing something, if you are inspecting something, come join us, ask your questions, and I will try to answer, and I will look with you to see what's happening. So I think that's it for now. Are there any questions maybe about Electron? I mean, we didn't even finish the website. Let's at least go through the last few bits. There's a lot of black on or dark gray text on white, so this is very good readability. This is pretty close together, so that could be improved, but that's more UX than accessibility. Then you have 3 sort of iconic images. They are not links, so do you think they have an alt text? Oh, these have role presentation and area hidden through. So these are also sort of decorative, but they could just use alt text. An empty alt attribute. And then there's an H3 under it. Okay, so headings everywhere. These are links again. Interesting. It's not really clear where the link ends. So This is also something that a designer would probably look at, a good designer, UX designer. So it's an A. So it's a link with a span. And again, the image is added in CSS. And they say Windows installer. So at least the text is not duplicated in this case. Get started with Electron. Also very readable text, all pretty reasonable contrast. I think that's pretty good. Download from GitHub. That's a link to GitHub. The image is also a link to GitHub. I don't know why the image is a link to GitHub. I wonder how many people actually click it. But again, that's UX, not accessibility. Then again, download from GitHub. And this is actually a different one than the one before. So if you use a screen reader and you say, hey, give me a list of all links that are on this page, 2 of them will be called download from GitHub, but they do different things. That can be confusing for a user. See more info is also really non-descriptive, but it's about fiddle, so maybe in the context it makes sense. Spin up the Quick Start app. So then it links to Electron Quick Start, more code. I hope this is not marked up as a picture as well. And the footer is also pretty readable. So there's a lot of good things happening here. There's no, what somebody called today, designer gray, which is like the most unreadable version of gray that you can pick probably. This is very hard to see though. There are some links in this text. Underlining them would be very, very easy. So there are some improvements, but they're mostly on the UX front and not real pure accessibility if I can inspect it really quickly. So I think that's it for now. In 2 weeks we'll do another Hacktoberfest session. And next week I hope to have a guest again. So last week we had Marcy Sutton. We even linked to her today with the links versus buttons, which is really nice. Kind of completes the circle. Next week a new guest, and then in 2 weeks we'll have the Hacktoberfest questions and answers. I hope to see you all again then. For me, it's a good night. Is it clear that it's dark in here? I guess it is. I bet if you look at all the recordings, you gradually see the background getting darker because it's really dark outside. It's like it's been 9 o'clock already. So good time zone. See you all the next time, and thank you very much for joining us. Thank you.